Hello, everybody, and we're back. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but I hope that you can hear us now. Welcome to the 2023 Luminate Midyear Music Report. I am Jaime Marconette, Senior Director, Music Insights and Industry Relations at Luminate.
My name is Haley Jones. I oversee all of our independent labels, independent publishers, independents across the music industry. I get to have all the fun.
Haley does have all the fun, and but we're also going to have a lot of fun today. And we cannot wait to dive in on the biggest trends impacting the music industry that you can find in our Luminate Midyear Music Report that's live on the site. And there's an interactive piece as well. One thing, though, before we get into the rest of the report, to do a little bit of housekeeping, we will take questions at the end. So if a question comes up throughout the presentation today, please feel free to just drop it in the chat and we'll get to as many questions as we can at the end of the webinar. But thank you so much for joining us.
So just in case you're not familiar with what we do, here's a little bit more about Luminate. We used to be known as SoundScan. We have rebranded in the last year. Our website is luminatedata.com. Hopefully you've already visited there today to download your very own copy of our Midyear Report. We track music consumption on the music side. We also have a TV and film side, but on the music side, we track music consumption. So think airplay, sales, physical sales, digital sales, and streaming in North America. And then globally, all over the world, we track streaming and digital song sales. And we have an insights team. And the insights team is awesome because they can tell us the who is doing all that consumption and the why. What are their motivations? So you're going to see data from both sides of our business today. Let's start here. Three major themes and trends that we call out in our Midyear Report. And they are bands, brands, and superfans, locals, lyrics, and language, and the impacts of new tracks.
Yeah, thanks, Haley. So let's jump in, though, first with mid-year metrics and look at streaming and physical sales from a top level view. One thing that we want to call out is that we are looking at the first 26 weeks of 2023. That is up through June 29th. And when we talk about this amount is up this much, or this amount is down this much, or those sorts of numbers, that refers to the period from last year, the first 26 weeks of last year of 2022. So that's the period that we are comparing against. There might be a couple of areas where we go outside of that a little bit, but we'll make sure to call them out to you as well. One thing I do want to also call out before we start to dive in is there is a lot of information in this report. And, we've picked out some of the elements for today's webinars, but there is more information in the report that you can download. And there's an interactive experience as well that really brings the stats to life. And as we go through the presentation slides too, we probably won't be, reading every single number, but we'll be highlighting the things that we feel are the most impactful. So let's start jumping in first on the global metrics. Total on-demand audio streams have been accelerating globally now for a few years, and we are continuing to see that as well. At the end of 2022, global on-demand audio streams were at 22.6%. That has now jumped to 22.9% growth, and we are seeing that acceleration. At Luminate, one of the numbers that really caught our eye this year was that there were 1 trillion on-demand audio streams by the end of March this year. And that was about 4 weeks faster than the total from last year to get to that point. Crazy. Now, if you look at the chart, in terms of on-demand audio streams, we're at 2 trillion. So we're keeping that pace up as well. So it'll be really fascinating to see where we end up. But given these numbers and where we are right now, if we were to keep this pace up, we would hit 4 trillion on-demand audio streams globally. On the US side, we are also seeing on-demand audio stream acceleration. Now, this was a break in trend, actually, that we saw starting last year. Between 2019, 2020, 2021, streaming in the US was still growing, on-demand audio streaming. It was still growing. It just wasn't growing as fast a rate. So the net new streams per year was just getting a little bit lower every year. That trend broke, though, last year when we saw acceleration for the first time in the United States in a few years. That acceleration is now continuing as well. For this period, on-demand audio streams, we have 616.5 billion so far. In the first 26 weeks of this year in the US, that's a 13.5% increase over last year. Keeps the acceleration going. Another thing I want to call out about this is that if you look to the right side of the screen, you'll see physical album sales. Physical is up. And not only that, it's up in every category. CDs are up, vinyl is up, cassette sales are up. They're all up. This is a change with all three of them being up from what we saw at the year end. In particular, vinyl is up almost 22%.
Yay.
That's huge, right?
Yay.
And I think that, what we saw at the end of 2022 was that vinyl growth was slowing, and a lot of that was due to the production issues, the vinyl plants, the very long backlog of production. It would take 9 months to get a vinyl record. Those have started to ease a bit, and there's now more vinyl being able to be produced and get into consumers' hands. The consumer demand has been there the whole time, and so now that we've been able to get more supply out there, they are purchasing in higher numbers. And we're going to talk a little bit more about a couple of these other categories as we go on as well. But I do want to call out CDs. CDs are up, and that is mostly driven by K-pop. If you were to look at the top 10 CDs so far in the US for 2023 through the first 26 weeks, 9 out of the top 10 are K-pop. The other one is Taylor Swift. So fun there. And current versus catalog.
So this is not new news, so to speak, but good to know nonetheless. Catalog continues to dominate consumption in the US. So people love music they know. There is one place and one trend like that where this is being bucked. We're going to tell you a little bit more about that later. But look at catalogs, 72.8%, so almost 73% over new music, which is at 27% so far this year.
All right, so let's jump into the first trend: bands, brands, and super fans.
So direct to consumer is growing. And direct to consumer, when we say that, it means artist websites, label, official stores. Think about super fans. When I think D2C, I think super fans.
Definitely, of course.
Yes. And D2C makes up just over 10% of all US physical sales, moving over 4.4 million pieces so far this year. The majority of which is vinyl. You're going to see that in the second bubble on this slide. Sales are up 26%, which is more than the industry as a whole.
It is.
Very interesting. CDs are in the third bubble on this slide. They're up 15%, and cassettes are down nearly 15% in the D2C world. And I want to call that out because that's interesting. We just saw cassettes were up on the other slide.
Yeah, definitely. So there are a couple of really interesting things going on here. First is that cassettes are slowing. After 2021, when they doubled the amount of volume, then we saw a 28% growth in 2022. Yeah. However, we are seeing, closer, we're definitely seeing in the single digits, about, 5 or 6% growth right now for cassettes as a whole. So that category is slowing as a whole. I think what we're seeing here, though, also is that we are seeing cassettes being sold in other places as well. I think that for a while there, cassettes were, I think, over 36%, 37% were being sold through D2C stores. Yeah. That share has dropped to other retailers starting to sell cassettes, indie record stores, those sorts of things as well, which then affects the amount of cassettes that are being sold at D2C.
Where's Radio Shack when you need them?
That's where you need to get the cassette player.
So quick view here. Again, we're just looking at direct to consumer sales. So on the left, rock rules. This is the genres of those 4.4 million sales that we told you about. And on the right, as we also showed you in the last slide, vinyl makes up about 60% of all D2C sales.
So this is a little bit what I was referring to before as well. So what this graph shows is that what percentage of cassettes or vinyl or CDs are sold through D2C stores. And you can see that, the 36.2% is what I was referencing just a minute ago. And that, that's how many percent of cassettes were sold through D2C stores last year. That has dropped to 29.2%, but that's still 3 out of 10. Yeah. A couple of really interesting notes here, though. 11.2% of vinyl records in the US so far this year have been sold through D2C stores. That's the entire category. That's 1 in 9. And then CDs are just about 10%. Haley also referenced the current versus catalog conversation. And actually what we're seeing in terms of current versus catalog at the D2C level is that 60% are current titles. Oh. And Anecdotally, I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't know about you, but there's definitely been times where I'll see my favorite artist or band announce that a new album's coming, and I'll rush to their e-com store to make sure that I get a limited edition vinyl as a pre-order.
Yeah.
And so I think that these D2C these D2C titles are also really, really important for first week sales, and that's where we're also seeing the current number go up.
Yeah. So lots of text on this slide. It's really great stuff. So I recommend you dig into our mid-year report after, but I'm just going to give you cliff notes here, and underlined and in bold: make more merch, especially the kind that Gen Z will love, because 42% of Gen Z says they want more options to represent their favorite bands, their favorite artists. They want to wear that t-shirt. Also good to know, the most popular place that people are buying merch, 37% of the general population say they got merch at a concert. So if there were more merch available on a D2C site, I'm just saying.
Of course, yeah. And you can package it, you can put it together and be able to sell music right alongside it as well. So let's jump in and talk about super fans. So when we talk about super fans, at Luminate, we are seeing a few different characteristics really define these fans. The first of which is that they are social signalers. And what we mean by that is that they are typically the first in their network or their group of friends to discover new artists. Also, their friends and their network look to them for recommendations. Number two is that super fans are 59% more likely to say they would like to connect with artists on a more personal level. So there is an expression of identity that the super fans are also aligning in values and aligning in other ways with these artists, and their outward expression of themselves, they connect with artists over that. And then the third thing that I would like to call out here is that super fans really love being super fans and also talking with other super fans. So they're continuing to learn about new music and share with others. In terms of, when we're breaking out our marketing textbooks, right, when we're talking about early adopters, these are the early adopters. These are the ones who are finding new music and then able to share it to others to really amplify.
We want more super fans.
Yep.
So hopefully the 80-20 rule, excuse me, is not new to you, right? We've heard about this for a long time, at least in other businesses. It means that 20% of your fans or your audience drive 80% of your revenue. And here we found that 15% of the general population are super fans. But when you look at music consumers, then it jumps to 19%. So totally true in the music industry too. Very important group. Very, very important. Couple other things to note about super fans. They spend 80% more money on music activities monthly than the regular consumer, and then we were just referencing D2C and physical purchases through D2C. It would then stand to reason and also make sense that we're finding that physical music purchasers are over 2 times more likely to be super fans, which really, speaks to the fandom around artists. They may be purchasing a vinyl to play. They may be purchasing a vinyl to also as a collectible, as they're streaming. So these are artists. These are fans that are fully about the artist and invested. So let's talk about physical a little bit. I have Olivia Newton-John rolling through my head. On this slide is what we refer to as a store strata of all physical sales so far this year. So in other words, where are people buying physical music? And the headline here is independent record stores rule. Independent record store sales grew share. So that's the pink portion of this graph. Part of that growth due to Record Store Day. We had an amazing Record Store Day in 2023. We sold 37% more in 2023 April than in April of 2022, which is pretty fascinating. Internet mail order, which is in blue here, still representing about 15 million pieces. They lost a little bit of share. So Jaime, we were just talking about D2C, and wouldn't internet mail order be D2C also? So yes, correct. D2C does fold under internet mail order, as well as some, if you're ordering from the website of a chain or a major retailer and you're ordering from that website and that services the product, or you're ordering from a service like Amazon or something else, that does go under internet mail order. A couple of things are going on here. To back up
Haley's point about independent record stores, they really have had a great half year. They're up 26% overall in sales. Internet mail order, yeah, the volume is higher, but it's only at 4% higher.
Yeah.
So the volume is more, but compared to the growth of indie record stores, it's not as high at all. And so what's happening is indie is taking the share, and it has to take the share from other places. So even though IMO is up, it's just not up as much. And so its share moves over to independent.
All right. So this is what the physical buyer looks like from our insights team. So everything in this slide represented with indices. So from the left to the right here, CD buyers, cassette buyers, vinyl buyers, and then overall physical buyers are on the right. So first, let's look specifically at vinyl buyers, because that's the fun stuff, right? I want to make sure you know how to read the indices. So vinyl buyers are more likely to be Gen Z. See that 133 in brackets? That's the index. So, and indices is what happens when you compare a group to the general population. So you would read this, that vinyl buyers are 33% more likely to be Gen Z. They're 24% more likely to be LGBTQ. 23% more likely to live in an urban area rather than suburbia or out in the country. And they are twice as likely, or they spend twice as much money in the music industry, which is pretty fascinating.
Hugely valuable,
Yeah.
Hugely valuable fans. Speaking of spending money, we do want to share some insights also around the optimum prices for vinyl records. Now, our Luminate Insights research team has spent a lot of time. They've surveyed fans, and we are happy to share a couple of the stats that we've been able to pull out of this to really show the range. And I think what this really indicates is that, you know, knowing your audience and knowing how they're engaging with music as well is incredibly important, even when you're pricing different items. So going down the row here, jazz fans, their optimum price is upwards of $30 per vinyl record. You know, probably have a lot of audiophiles there in the jazz fandom world. 80s decade listeners, optimum price $25.80 for a vinyl record, while boomers, a little bit less than $20. So there is a wide spectrum of pricing here, but again, that really just underscores knowing your consumer group, knowing how they're engaging with music, and also, you know, the ability to then market to them. Our Luminate Insights research team has done a fantastic job with this. So please reach out if you have any questions, because there's a lot of really, really great data here on how to price those vinyl records with fans.
So if you bought a concert ticket lately, speaking of pricing, you know what I'm talking about. Ouch, it hurts a little bit, right? Everything seems to cost more these days, including live music. So think of this as a barrier to entry slide for concerts. On the left, the average concert goer is spending about 40% more on concerts this year when compared to last year. That's a lot. Yeah. On the right, it wasn't that long ago that COVID, thank God COVID's over, but COVID was keeping people away from public places. Definitely. And that's the pink line on the graph on the right, which is headed down. And the blue line is headed up. And this is where listeners are telling us that it's the price of a ticket that might keep them from attending shows. I mean, you can go to less concerts if it costs 40% more.
Yeah, no, that is a great point. And the consumers, that's what they're indicating to us too. Okay, so time to jump into trend number 2. And I'm fascinated by this trend, and I'm really excited to share some information on this with everybody. So locals, lyrics, and languages.
So globalization continues. And here's a couple of stats, again, from our insights team, self-reported here. So 69% of US music listeners say they're listening to music that originates outside of the US. So that's interesting, but it could also just as easily include like The Weeknd or Justin Bieber from Canada, as it could Enrique Iglesias or Don Omar. Yet, at least 40% of music listeners in the US say they listen to music that's not in English, which is really fascinating. Again, globalization. So the most listened to other language, Spanish, followed by French, followed by Japanese, and you can see the rest on this slide.
Definitely. And you know, another thing that we've done at Luminate is we've also taken a consumption look? So that is what the slides that we just covered are what the consumers are telling us when they're responding via surveys and other consumer research data. But what does the consumption say? Well, it essentially says the same thing.
I love it when that happens.
So we've looked at the top 10,000 tracks in the US based on total on-demand audio and video streams. And what you can see here is a graph since 2021. And the English share of tracks in that top 10,000 in the US has dropped by 4.2%. It was at 92.5% in 2021. Through the first half of this year, it's at 88.3%. Spanish has grown 3.6%. So Spanish is the language that is really, starting to replace that share. We have seen Korean grow as well. That's K-pop and South Korean music. And, it is really, really interesting because what we're seeing here is a shift and a shift based on demographics as well, right? So a couple of things to call out that in the US, Bad Bunny is 1.62 billion streams. Eslabon Armado, 795 million on-demand audio streams, and the Karol G, 544 million on-demand audio streams are the top Latin music artists. We are also seeing this around the world as well. There's a lot of great information. Again, you can pore over this and really dig in our both the PDF version and the interactive report. So I'm just going to call out a couple of things, but I want to look at the global line. So over the last couple of years, English share globally, now and again, we're looking at the top 10,000 tracks globally, on-demand audio and video streaming. English share has dropped about 11% since 2021. Spanish is the second largest language. It's actually just dropped a little bit. And though what that really is indicating, and remember, we're looking at the global streams, so songs and tracks from all over the world. Take a look at number 3, Hindi. Hindi has more than doubled its share since 2021. We are seeing that, this goes right in line with India. India has been a huge streaming country over the last few years and has contributed some of the most to the global growth in on-demand audio and video streaming. So we are seeing Hindi more than double its share as India really becomes a global streaming force. And so that number of Spanish kind of going down, volume is up, but because we're seeing these other areas also coming on so strong that its share is a little lower. Also want to call out a case like Portugal. So Portugal, you do see that English share has dropped a little bit, and this actually supports recent work by Will Page in Globalization, which used Luminate data to show native music in different territories. But if you look at Portugal, English share has dropped a bit over the last few years, while Portuguese has gone up. So we are seeing this effect of the declining share of English music, both in the US as well as globally, and a lot of the languages that are native to specific regions starting to rise. So fascinating stuff, and we'll love to just keep an eye on this as we move forward.
It's a fun time to be in the music business. So outside of the US, where is streaming growing the most? Asia is actually number 1, followed by emerging markets like South Africa, and Latin America shows huge growth.
Huge growth.
And if you've been hiding under a rock somewhere, maybe you haven't heard, but country music is having a huge moment right now. Country celebrating the biggest week ever in on-demand audio streaming at the beginning of June. Country's massive success comes in part because of, Morgan Wallen. Example here. In March, when his new album came out, 21% of the country streams during the release week came from the new album, One Thing at a Time, which is wild.
And that's 1 in 5.
Whoa.
Yeah, huge numbers there. So why is this happening? Why are we seeing this shift? And we are starting to see a new country consumer start to emerge. Historically, you'll see that the average country fan, and this is in the row on the bottom on your screen. Historically, we've seen that the average country fan is more tuned into AM, FM radio. They've tended to be a little bit older. But what we are seeing now with artists like Bailey Zimmerman and Luke Combs and Zach Bryan and Morgan Wallen, we're seeing a younger fan that is incredibly streaming focused. And we'll show a couple of more slides on that here in a minute. But want to call out that, you look at every single one of these artists and their fan groups are young. Luke Combs, that's actually his Gen Z and his millennial amount. They are both the same. So they were tied. So you can just see that, his fan base is incredibly young too. Morgan Wallen, in 2022, we tracked his fan base as being Gen Z.
Yeah.
It's shifted just a little bit, and that's probably likely to him becoming more mainstream, bringing in more fans, and actually bringing in a little bit of an older demographic as well as new fans come to him. So as he grows, he's bringing in more fans, and that's kind of shifted his number one cohort, but still millennial, still very young. And we are seeing that this group of fans are powering these artists to new streaming heights, and they are becoming incredibly powerful. So let's talk about the Gen Z country music fans in the US, because there are a couple of really interesting trends here. 32% Gen Z is 32% more likely to discover new music through video and or audio streaming services. That's the Gen Z country fan. But interestingly, the Gen Z country fan is 11% more likely to discover this way than other Gen Z music listeners. So we also see this in the number on the right, 92%. So Gen Z country fans are 92% more likely to listen to playlists shared by family and friends than the average music listener.
92%.
But they're 37% more likely to do this than other Gen Z music listeners. Both of these stats really underscore how tuned in these fans are to streaming, and also how tuned in they are to discovering new artists through streaming. So they are actually, over-indexing over other Gen Z music listeners in this way, which is, really helping to power the overall country music growth that we're seeing as this new fan emerges.
Passion.
Yeah, it's fantastic to see.
So here's where country is being streamed the most. Nothing super surprising here, right? I mean, it's logical to me that the US would lead country growth, followed by Canada, followed by Australia. But the slide to me gets more interesting as you go down the list. Jaime, I'm pretty surprised by the Philippines, like unexpected for me. 600 million country streams so far this year.
So what we're seeing is the Philippines is really becoming a much larger streamer in general. They've been growing quickly. They also import a lot of foreign content into the Philippines, and their audience is social media savvy. So they bring in content from other places, and then they also are able to amplify it through socials. And so this is a great country for importing content into to Asia. One thing I want to call out is that actually last October, when Taylor Swift's Midnight's album came out, last October, outside of the US, the highest volume of on-demand audio and video streams combined outside of the US was the Philippines.
Wow.
So they are becoming a streaming powerhouse, and obviously are engaging with country music as well. Okay, so speaking of global areas, let's take a snapshot of genres around the world.
So one of the hot genres, dare I even maybe say the hottest genre, is regional Mexican.
Yeah, regional Mexican is most certainly having a moment, right? We are seeing this in the numbers, 10.4 billion on-demand audio streams so far in the US this year. This is a 50% increase over the same period last year. You are seeing Eslabon Armado.
I love that song, by the way. I really do. One of the best songs so far this year.
It's a great song.
Fun.
Junior H, Ivan Cornejo. We're also seeing the recent success of artists like Peso Pluma really take hold. Now, a couple of things as we start to look at the distribution of fans in the US, and we have a couple of slides that show a map coming up as well with other subgenres. So this will the darker shades that you see are higher proportions of fans in these areas, and you'll see that on the coming slides as well. So regional Mexican, highest on the West Coast, and then also you'll see through Texas, and then the Southwest and the West as well. Those are the areas where the most dense population in indexing of regional Mexican fans. Also want to call out that 17% are non-Hispanic. So, still definitely a large Hispanic population that is engaging with the music, but this is also growing as well as more fans come into it. And then 34% more likely to be millennials for regional Mexican music fans.
Not what I would expect either.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another hot genre, we've been hearing about this one a little bit longer, but Afro beats continues.
Yeah, Afrobeats is really, really great. And it's fantastic to see what's happening here. So Afrobeats, 2.5 billion streams. That's up 34% over this period last year. Burna Boy actually makes up about 10% of the US streams for Afrobeats. And when you look at the proportions of fans and where they are in the US on the map, a couple of things to call out here is that the proportions that we're seeing actually do track fairly well to US Census data of sub-Saharan diaspora and the heritage there. And what we'll see is in the New England area, as in Boston and Providence, there are a lot of sub-Saharan lineage listeners up there as well. And we also see that throughout the East Coast too, as you go on. But in terms of the overall trends and where we're seeing the highest indexing, it follows the map pretty quickly. A couple of areas other to call out is that it does fans do tend to be Gen Z. They are more likely to be LGBTQ plus, and 62% are not Black.
Interesting. So not just about K-pop anymore. Now we have J-pop.
Yeah, you're right. So we are seeing J-pop starting to emerge as well, up 30% over last year. We see a higher density of fans in the New York area, and then essentially the western part of the United States as well. 72% more likely to be millennials, 88% more likely to be LGBTQ plus, and also leans a little male. 56% of the listeners are male, which is they're 12% more likely to be male.
Interesting. So we probably need to talk about new music. I think it's always taken so much to cut through, and today it's just getting harder and harder.
Yeah, it's true. It is true. And one of the reasons is because of all of the content proliferation that we're seeing. So what we're showing on this slide here is the amount of new ISRCs, audio and video, that have been ingested into the Luminate system. We have over 200 million ISRCs in our system, but this is the amount of new ISRCs each year over the last several years. Rather, other than just a small dip at the beginning of the pandemic there, really you can see that the growth has been pretty steady and pretty strong. Currently, there have been 20.2 million new ISRCs that have come into our system this year. That is an average of 112,000 a day. We saw, if we're going to break out by quarters, first quarter and second quarter, we saw 120,000 average. In the first quarter, we saw 105,000 daily average. In the second quarter, overall, it's 112.
Got it.
But want to call out that 20.2 number. If we were to keep up this pace, we will have 40.4 million new ISRCs in our system this year, which is a pretty healthy clip of growth over the 34.1 million that were counted last year. So this definitely, we are continuing to see content proliferation, and we'll be continuing to track it over here at Luminate as well.
So of those 112,000, where are all of the ISRCs coming from that are being uploaded to the DSPs? And another really interesting stat, less than 5% are coming from the majors and or the independent distribution arms of the majors. So think like the Orchard or ADA. So mostly DIY, yeah?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that definitely going on here. So to your point, major distribution includes ADA, the Orchard, Virgin Music. That's all in the major distribution line.
Yep.
And then it is indie distribution. It is some, services that are like CD Baby or Symphonic, these sorts of things, DistroKid. It's indie distribution, and then it's also it includes DSPs that have historically catered to the creator community. Yeah. I'm thinking DSPs like SoundCloud or other places where you can direct upload as well. And so that's being included there as well. That's really, really adding to the amount of ISRCs, video and audio.
How many of them are actually getting consumption?
Well, we did take a look at this in 2022, and I think that it's more fair to update this on a yearly basis, and I'll get into a bit of a reason why. But what we saw for 2022 when we looked at the audio only is that we saw that 42% of all ISRCs, and there was 158 million audio ISRCs that we counted last year. 42% had 10 or less streams for the whole year. 24% had 0 streams. Now, the reason why we didn't want to put this up right now in slide, and we're just going to mention the 2022 numbers, is because those tracks had a full year to reach those levels. And right now it would be a little premature to put that up without a full year's activity to actually be able to really give an apples to apples look. But based on 2022 numbers, that's where it came in.
Good tease for the year-end report. Which will probably be here before you know it. I still can't believe it's July already.
So one last thing we wanted to share is we wanted to take a look at one of the most infamous tracks that have come out this year. And that is Ghostwriter's Heart on My Sleeve, which was created with AI without the appropriate releases for name and likeness and things like that. But it was created to sound like Drake featuring The Weeknd. And what we wanted to show from our data is how the track, was able to spread so quickly to 30 other countries. And what this underscores is content proliferation. It also underscores some of the topics that we've covered, in that there really aren't a whole lot of barriers now geographically, right? So music can move freely. And here, what we wanted to show is just how this track was able to spread very quickly before it was taken down. And so one thing I want to call out is that during the first week of release, no impactful streams. Streams were in the hundreds total for the first week of release. It wasn't until day 8 when total on-demand audio and video streams combined hit 2,400 in the US. And that was just enough to catch the attention of Canada, the UK, Australia, and Germany, which then came on day 9. Canada makes sense given, we have, AI of Drake and The Weeknd. But once those countries came on, you then saw a bigger jump on day 11, at which point, day 8, 2,400 total on-demand streams, day 11, over 1 million. And that's when that big jump happened. It was then pulled down on day 12. But our data shows that at the, by the time it had been pulled down on day 12, it had spread to over 30 countries. And that was mostly through the US and Canada, Europe, Latin America, and Asia, were the core areas where it had spread to before it was pulled down. So again, in a world without borders, these things can move very easily and very quickly, and it doesn't take much, maybe just a 2,400 stream spike in a particular country to grab the attention of others.
It'll be interesting to keep watching AI too.
Yep. For sure.
So just as a reminder, hopefully you've been typing your questions in the question box. We have some other members, it takes a village, by the way, of our team that are going to start calling out some questions. But if you want to submit one, feel free. We're going to try to get to as many questions as we can here. FYI, if we don't answer your question live, we will hit you after today's webinar. So
and thank you so much for tuning in. And let's hit some questions.
Are you going to make the webinar available after?
Are you going to make the webinar available after?
Yes, we will be making the webinar available after. Thank you for that question. It will be available through our website, and there will be directions to it.
Okay, question number 2. How do you see superfan behavior evolve with the rise of the creator economy?
How do you see superfan behavior evolve with the rise of the creator economy?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And the thing is, super fans, to Haley's point earlier, when we started talking about the amount of super fans that are music listeners and that 80-20 role, it really is 20% of your fans could provide upwards of 80% of your revenue. So in a creator economy, if you're able to super serve your fans and be able to make sure that you're targeting the ones who are the most who are showing the most engagement and the most loyal, and you're able to super serve those, even as a creator or independent artist, you will then be able to run your business,
reap the benefit,
and reap the benefits of the super fans that are incredibly tuned in, because that 80-20 rule it's fascinating how that just kind of sticks in so many different areas. But yes, you can definitely continue to work with these super fans even as a creator or an indie artist to build your business and get revenue from these really devoted fans.
Okay, do language stats change meaningfully when you look at streams of catalog versus new release?
Do language stats change meaningfully when you look at current versus catalog. And the other thing, I don't know that we actually defined current versus catalog in today's webinar. I think I spaced that. So
okay.
both things.
Okay. So first, current versus catalog, you're totally right.
Yes.
Sorry. When we were talking about current versus catalog in that previous slide, in Luminate system, a current track or a project is something that is 18 months or newer. Catalog is 18 months or older. Based on the language question, I think that that's a fascinating question that we will need to look at. You know, I don't have an answer for you right now on that one, but I do think that that's a fascinating question because tracks are able to just, you know, kind of come out of nowhere. I will use Lady Gaga's Bloody Mary as an example. That is a older catalog track that, you know, hit a viral craze at the end of last year and spread throughout the world. So obviously English language track, and at such a massive level, it definitely has an impact. But we're going to have to look at, you know, the exact numbers around that and then be able to get back to you on that.
No, it's a good question. I'm curious too. Yeah.
This one may be more of a comment, but so where are the female artists in country music?
So where are the female artists in country music was the question. Maybe more of a comment.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's a really important comment and question. And, you know, I mean, obviously there are a lot of female artists in country music doing a lot of fantastic work. What we've shared here today is just, you know, a couple of the artists that have been at the top of the Billboard charts, typically in the top 25. And, you know, but that's a really, really important point to bring up. And thank you for sharing that and commenting.
Okay, maybe last question.
Okay.
Is there any intelligence on what % or growth patterns for Morgan Wallen listeners who were not country fans?
So the question was, are there any stats or more information for Morgan Wallen fans that maybe were not previous country fans?
Definitely, we definitely have that information via our Illuminate Insights research tool. We have something called an artist and genre tracker where we can go back and we can look at trends and we can look at, you know, how the fans have grown over time. That is something that I don't unfortunately have right off the top of my head right now, but it is something that we'll be able to get back to you, and we do have that data in our system.
So another great question.
Yeah.
Good questions. Thank you very much. Thank you for spending time with us today. Hopefully you download our year-end report and check out the fancy new interactive. I haven't even seen that.
Watch the data come to life.
I need to do that. We appreciate you being here with us today. Thank you, Jaime.
You're awesome. Thank you, Haley. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. It takes a village.
And thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate it.
Have an awesome day.